Welcome to Courtney on Health on MalcolmPresents.com. And Maxine, introduce us.
I will do that. So, hi, Courtney, and hi, Malcolm, and welcome to Courtney on Health, a Zoomcast series about how to survive the COVID-19 pandemic. And as we said, we hope that's going to be short lived, with tips on nutrition and exercise given by Courtney Gravenese, registered dietitian with the CDN Master of
But
Science in Nutrition and Applied Physiology. Courtney is an experienced nutritional and health consultant in the New York metro area, but now the program is going out to the world. So, and she will help guide you on a path to wellness and health.
yeah,
So,
just an addendum to that, Max. It's not only after the COVID, we're going to continue to lead a healthy life and a
right.
nutritious life.
And prevent getting sick. Wellness, health and wellness is important. And prevention, right? Courtney, that's a big thing, I think. So
I wish you could say to prevent us from getting older or feeling older.
hey, that's gonna come. I don't know if it'll be in our lifetimes, but maybe our kids. We'll see. Uh,
Well,
anyway,
I don't go to the doctor anymore because, well, he says it's a matter of health. It's your age,
right.
age related.
Your knees are bad. I wonder why.
Right.
And back to the show. We, I'm gonna do a little poem to bring in the topic.
That's surprising.
It's called Family Style by Little Dazzy Donuts. I don't know if that's you know, a rap name, but I have no idea. But she's a children's poet, and it's called Family Style. We're squeezed in real tight, crammed around the table with knives, forks, and spoons and large wooden ladles. First comes the pasta, then large plates of bread, meatballs, and salads to keep us all fed. The chatter is loud and the food keeps on coming as we reach over each other for a serving of something that's tomato and cheesy and good for the soul. I have handfuls of bruschetta and I'm swallowing whole. Our faces are food stained and covered in smiles when we all get together to eat family style. I really like that. That's kind of a nice poem. So
That
we
sounds like she was raised in an Italian family. Does that
hey
sound familiar, Courtney?
It sure does.
hey, I've had many wonderful dinners with my neighbors who are Italian. Uh, we love family dinners. Okay, back to that. But we need to be conscious of what we are putting on the table. Something we often hear parents tell their kids at dinner table is, "You will eat what I tell you to eat, and finish what's on your plate." But should we let our kids choose what they eat, and do they have to clean their plates? A variety of food helps them make good nutritional choices and will lead to joyful eating experiences. While pizza, mac and cheese, and hot dogs are staples in many homes, how can we get children to eat more salads and maybe more international or Mediterranean foods? According to the Mayo Clinic, nutrition for kids is based on the same principles as nutrition for adults. Everyone needs to have the same type of nutrients, such as vitamins, minerals, carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Children, however, need different amounts of specific nutrients at different ages. A balanced diet of, again, protein, fruits, veggies, grains, and dairy will lead to a healthy diet. So Courtney will take us through what's best for your kids to, eat and stay fit and strong at different times of their lives. And so Courtney, what should we be feeding our kids?
Yeah. Well, thanks. This is we're going to continue our topic of nutrition through the lifespan. And so today we're going to hopefully cover toddler age up to maybe, middle school. So yeah, the Mayo Clinic comment that, yeah, children have the same nutritional requirements in terms of variety as adults. What I think is important for parents to remember, and it might help with the struggle a little bit that they feel like, oh my gosh, my child's not eating enough, is that the child portion size, actually I should say serving size, is much smaller than the adult size. So for example, an adult serving size of any of our foods, whether it be fruits, veg, protein, dairy foods, is only about a quarter of an adult size. So smaller. As they move a little bit older, it goes to about a third of an adult portion size. So once you know that they shouldn't be sitting down to the exact same size of a particular food as you are, I think it's like, okay, they're eating, but they're just not eating as much. And that's the way it certainly should be. So I think that's important to know, particularly during those finicky toddler years where children are really playing with their food, experiencing with flavors and textures. It's the process of putting something in their mouth and putting it down a couple of times. Sometimes they'll take a bite and put it down. It's all part of the process. It really takes a little bit of time, and it's all under the umbrella of normal childhood nutrition behavior. I hesitate to give caloric amounts for children because the last thing I want with a busy parent is to feel like they have to sit there with a calculator calculating calories. But suffice to say, they need fewer calories than adults need up until adolescence, and we'll talk about that in another episode. So roughly about 1,000 to 1,200 calories for your 2 to 3-year-old, roughly. For your 4 to 8-year-old, you bump it up to about 1,200 to 1,400 calories. Of course, if you have a particularly active child, you're going to be on the high end. Child who's maybe a little bit more lethargic and maybe not as active, on the lower end. You always have to factor activity into the mix. And by the way, even though we're talking specifically about nutrition, wellness always has to include, no matter what age, activity levels. Again, so we're talking nutrition here, but you always want to make sure your kids are as active as they possibly can be, at any point during their childhood. So talking about serving sizes and things, I thought it would be helpful to see some actual serving sizes of what I'm talking about. So when you hear that, the fruit, children who are 2 to 3 need a cup of fruit and a cup of vegetables each day, well, take a look at it. If you actually measured this stuff out, you'd see, okay, well, that's really not as much as I thought it would be. So this is actually, over a serving size. This is spinach leaves here, and this is raw. Okay. If you cook that down, for people who cook any leafy greens, it cooks down to pretty much nothing, right? So that's not a ton. This is doable. We can do this. And this is a serving of carrots, a child-sized serving of carrots. Now, the one thing I will say about any of the foods we're talking about, sometimes it's all about the shape of it. And maybe offering a dip. Kids do like their dip, some do, some don't. Experiment with that. But for example, some kids will do like a baby carrot just like that, and they're fine with that. Some kids like it into more stick form. Some kids like, okay, well, maybe your kid is better with discs. So not to make yourself completely preoccupied with, cutting this into cute little shapes. That's not what I'm talking about. But for some kids, it really is all about the presentation, the shape of it, and if there's something that they can dip their fingers into.
A question for you. Are those raw carrots, or should they be cooked and softened a little bit?
These are raw, so we're going to talk about choking hazards in a little bit. So these happen to be raw. When you're talking younger kids, so any child who's within the choking age, and that is up to about 3 years of age, you want to avoid any raw veg or fruit for that matter. So let's say an apple that's got skin on it, any burned fruit or veg that they could potentially choke on. So you're right, Malcolm. Yeah, for a little guy or a little girl, you're going to make sure that these are soft cooked and then of course cooled, and then maybe cut into these shapes before they start to chew on them, simply from a choking hazard perspective.
Actually, also, is it involved with the teething age when they can start chewing that? And
yeah, so the 2 to, we covered breastfeeding up until early infancy last time. You have a whole ability to be able to chew and teething. How many teeth do they have in their mouth? So certain things feel good. So for example, a cold, maybe soft cooked, but not falling apart carrot might be a great, they might feel good to them. But you want to be very mindful of your child's ability to chew at their age and any potential choking hazards. So think firm things that could get lodged in their throat, very crunchy things, obviously things like peanuts that could get stuck. Even when it comes to nut butters, you can do a very thin layer of a nut butter, but because that can be chewed fairly easily and then swallowed, but avoid very thick layers because it gets stuck in the throat and they don't have the tongue thrust ability to be able to digest it, chew it, swallow it the way older kids would. Same thing with things like grapes. For anybody who is bringing in snacks into nursery schools, or for even for your own home, if it's a larger grape, actually any grapes whatsoever, up until that choking age, you're going to want to cut them in half, very small pieces, so that if it happens to get down their throat unchewed, it's not going to block their airway. Raisins, dried fruit, things like that are also on that list. And although a fantastic snack for older kids, obviously things like popcorn, again, think anything dry, firm that can get lodged in the throat and block that airway. You would want to avoid. But older kids, popcorn, great snack. We're going to talk about fiber and things like that in a little bit.
So let's say that we're talking about a little older, past the toddler phase where we don't have to kind of totally worry about the choking issue, and they're heading out to either preschool or kindergarten, and breakfast. They're heading out to school,
Yeah.
and the breakfast, they see it on TV, Lucky Charms. My question is to you: Are they magically delicious, and should we be letting our kids eat them, all the time? So, what do you suggest?
Parents, I touched on this last week, and it's a really hard concept for a lot of parents to get their arms around. But the division of responsibilities of how to feed your kid falls squarely in the following roles. Okay, you decide the what. Okay, you decide the when. You decide the where. It is your child's decision to decide if they are going to eat it and how much of it they're going to eat. So try very hard. You always want to have your kids, you want them to be happy with the foods that they have, but don't feel like you have to fall squarely into this trap of buying these high sugary, typically kid-centric foods that aren't necessarily all that healthy for them. Every once in a while, of course, this is fine. Life is about, a little bit of, balance in there. So you want them to have some treats, but set the routine early on that maybe they can help with the week of breakfast options for them. So they can maybe be participating in that part of the meal planning without necessarily backing you into a corner of sugared cereals like that every morning.
Just an addendum to that. I don't know, this week, Tucker Carlson was very controversial on TV on Fox when he said if he sees a parent walking around with a child that has a mask, he should call up Child Protective Services because that's child abuse.
I guess if your kid's eating Lucky Charms, that's the next thing.
Right. To me, when I'm in the supermarket and see a woman shopping with her child, and she has all these sugary products, including cereals and candies, I'm saying that's child abuse. Anyway.
Yeah, some people would agree with you, but as a health educator, I try not to be in the business of judging. I try to be in the business of, well, maybe there's some way I could reach that parent to explain that there are definitely some better options, out there. But with regard to breakfast, thanks for bringing that up, Maxine. We do have a goodly amount of studies to suggest that breakfast, and even in some cases, not necessarily the healthiest of all breakfasts, in children going off to school where they're in an environment to learn, perform much better with something in their stomach rather than going off on an empty stomach. So again, I'm not saying back yourself into a corner and give them whatever they want, but work with some options. There are so many things and so many time savers. I would love to do an episode on just time saving for the busy parent in the morning. So for example, making pancakes and waffles on the weekend, a bunch of them when you got some time. Stick them in a bag or a container, stick them in your freezer, and then on a busy school morning, all you're doing is throwing what you made in the toaster oven to heat up, or you warm up a pancake, for them. It's already ready to go. You add some fresh fruit, some milk or some soy milk, and you're ready to go. Fantastic. There are better options for ready-to-eat cereals out there. A little bit better than the old Lucky Charms. So you just have to learn how to read the labels and make sure that you're not swapping out one sugar for another type of sugar. I know we did a sugar episode and I will happily post more information about it, but you got to read the label because marketers are very, very good at making sure that they're confusing you about the type of sweetener that's in there. But Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to throw in a comment on Lucky Charms when they're little kids, and then college seems to be Captain Crunch.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait to get to college age,
I can't even imagine. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But I think it's important because, sugar is really top of mind for many parents, and I feel like, at least in my client base, everybody's really very aware of trying to find the hidden sugars in foods. But I feel like they're doing it at the risk of losing a nutrient dense food. And what I mean by that is, yes, it would be fantastic if you can start your little, baby on plain yogurt and keep them on plain yogurt their entire lives. That would be the best case scenario. Great protein source, vitamin D, probiotics, all that great stuff. The reality is, reality steps in, right? And your kids get used to sweet flavors. So I don't want a parent being like, well, this has got, look how much sugar. This has got 5 grams of added sugar in a tiny little pouch in here. I can't choose this for my kid. It's got too much sugar in it. But meanwhile, they put in their cart, Malcolm, there's that same cart that you were talking about, they're organic, but they're chocolate chip cookies that pretty much have, maybe a couple more grams. So nutrient dense food, not nutrient dense food. Doesn't mean never give your kid cookies again, but don't forsake something like a yogurt that has a little bit of sugar in it, when it has stuff like probiotics for a healthy gut, vitamin D, protein, calcium, phosphorus. Weigh out that nutrient density in order to help drive some of your decisions. And don't, because it has a little bit of sweetener in there. I mean, let's face it, stuff needs to taste good, right? It doesn't have to be loaded with sugar, but it needs to taste good. If it doesn't taste good, your kid's not eating it. And if the choice is this with a little bit of sugar in it, or they're going to run right for those Lucky Charms, or maybe a completely refined flour breakfast in the morning or a snack, I'm going to strongly encourage that parent to try and maybe consider some of these other options in there.
Yeah, is a child too young to have the artificial sweeteners?
Yeah, I don't recommend artificial sweeteners pretty much for anyone. For not because of its quote unquote toxicity, but because of the whole palate sweetness, what it could do to your overall caloric intake later on, but particularly in children. Children need calories. And the problem with artificial sweeteners, as we've touched on before, they are very sweet. So if you're trying to get your kiddo used to things that are not so sweet in the long run and kind of reset their palate, and you're giving them a food with an artificial sweetener that's in many cases 600, 800 times sweeter than regular sugar, you're going to have a hard time undoing that. And it's going to be a much higher hill, tougher hill to climb later on. So I do not recommend artificial sweeteners in children at all. Eat the real stuff, just eat less, start to get your kids used to a different variety of foods, flavors, garlic, onions, sauces, dips, things. It doesn't all have to be just plain steamed vegetables. Remember, it has to taste good. Maybe a little bit of sprinkled, Reggiano Parmigiano cheese on it will help a broccoli spear go a long way. That might be an option for it. Or like I said, maybe a little bit of pesto on the side to dip it in. Sometimes helping these things along goes a long way. Model your behavior. Your kids are smart. They're so smart. And they see very early on if mom and dad, or mom and mom, dad and dad, siblings, brothers, cousins, if they're not eating the same stuff they're eating. And they're smart to that. So they're going to look at that and they're going to say, well, they're not eating it. Why don't I need to eat it? So modeling that good behavior as a parent is one of the best things you can do down that pathway of childhood nutrition.
So what if the kid is really finicky and doesn't really, is doing, not eating well and isn't doing well weight wise? I mean, could you make it fun for them? Or can you, what can you do? And also, about kids being able to choose what they like, or having things like each day of the week, a different type of food, meatless Monday, Taco Tuesday, different nationalities, what can you do to make it fun?
Sure, absolutely. Get kids involved in the process as early as you can. And it could be everything from, like you said, helping with the week's menu planning. For some parents, it's actually a relief not to have to think about it. It's like, okay, you get to pick which cuisine you want. Tell me what you want. And even if it's pizza night, okay, it's pizza night. Maybe have a little bit more veg on it. Always have a vegetable on the side. They may eat it, they may not, but you're going to offer it and you're going to have it there visible. Or a nice big wonderful salad with all different types of vegetables in there, that even if they take it apart and just pick out what they want, that's okay. They're seeing it there. So let them get involved in that process. Bring them in the kitchen and get them involved. These are, they're so widely available now, all of these kid-centric utensils and things to help kids help prepare meals. Now, I get the busy weeknight might be a little bit tough, but maybe more parents have a weekend. So this is first of all, this is a Kevlar glove. And it's meant to put on a child's hand so that they reduce their risk of getting cut with a knife. But even if you're not comfortable giving them, obviously, one of your sharp kitchen knives, they have these kid knives. It's a rubber handle. I'll post some of the names, but they're so widely available now. It's great. It's got a little sheath that it comes in. You'll know it's not crazy. So, if you're whipping up for an adult, it won't be crazy sharp. But for a child, to be able to own the process of cutting up some foods, and prepare, it's wonderful. And again, it keeps the risk of injury down to a minimum. For some kids, they embrace this. Some kids don't. So some things work, right? Just like with many things in life, you try some different things to get them engaged. Some things will stick, some things won't. Help with maybe with the garden in the process. Maybe get, for the finicky kid that you mentioned before, sometimes it's about texture, right? So early on when I was practicing and I was working with a lot of kids, I'd say to the parents, well, have you tried frozen vegetables? And I wasn't very clear in what I meant. They're like, well, yeah, you mean well, why don't we buy fresh vegetables? I'm like, no. I literally mean give them frozen vegetables. So texturally, there's something different than a mushy cooked pea than a frozen crispy pea. So for some kids, it was like, these are great. They taste sweeter to them. They like the bite to it. They like the cold. Who knows? So there's all these different possibilities of things to try and get kids to try and try different foods. This is also wonderful for pincer grip, so for things that you can use early on when children are learning how to feed themselves, they do that pincer grip, that claw type of thing. So that's a great way. Using, and I'm not a big fan of stealth nutrition, and for those of you who are not familiar with that, it's the technique of hiding healthy ingredients in foods so that you essentially trick your kids into eating those healthy foods. So the issue with that is, we said kids are super smart, right? If they figure out that that's in there, they're going to say, well, wait a minute. It's like you're sending a message that this food is so nasty, I got to hide it in the other food. So that's not really a message that you want to send. You want them to be able to see it and be exposed to it and maybe learn, maybe like it, maybe not. So in theory, I'm not a fan of the stealth nutrition, but I will say there's great ways, particularly for a kid. You got to work with your pediatrician. He or she will absolutely tell you whether your child is slipping off of the curve in terms of their weight and you need to try and boost their calorie intake a little bit. You can do things like breads and muffins, and you can make, sort of bump up the nutritional value. So adding pureed pumpkin to pumpkin breads. And I'm not saying hide it, it just happens to make a great bread, and it's packed with vitamin A and beta carotene. And it's really breads and muffins are those kinds of things that can really help bulk, add calories in a small amount. Zucchini breads and things like that, banana breads, where you're adding a very healthy food to a bread that your child might find more palatable, so they may eat more of it. And you can really make these breads and muffins a nutritional powerhouse by adding these foods to it. But I'm not suggesting it because you're hiding it. I'm suggesting it because it's a great way to bump up the nutrition and get some calories into a kiddo who might need more calories.
So what about the flip side of the finicky, not eating kid, the kid who eats too much? There's a lot of childhood obesity now.
Sure. Yeah.
How is that being addressed?
So one thing we know, unfortunately, in the United States, just like with adults, fruit and vegetable intake among our children is woefully low. So again, I can give you the, the recommendations of, a cup to about 2.5 cups up to about a middle school age child of fruits and veg a day. That's not going to be super helpful if your kiddo doesn't like any of it. So you keep trying to offer it. And why is that helpful for overall obesity? Because we know that foods that are very high in fiber are a great vehicle for keeping you fuller longer. Remember, fiber doesn't have any calories to it, right? So you take it in, it's got a whole lot of nutrition to it. It keeps you fuller longer. And if you're fuller longer, you're less likely to graze throughout the day for perhaps some unhealthy foods. Structured regular meal times with maybe a couple of snacks in there if you feel that's appropriate. But when I'm working with parents where weight is a little bit of an issue, we certainly don't ever want to talk about you want to always talk about it. We want to be healthy, you want to be strong, you want to participate in a sport. You never want to say to a child, you're overweight, you're fat, you have this is not the way to motivate a child. So you want to make sure that they're filling up on those fiber foods. So oatmeal, fruits, vegetables, maybe some pastas that have a little bit more higher fiber content to them. Barilla Plus is a great brand. I love it. When it's cooked up, it tastes very much like regular pasta. So you really want to push those higher fiber foods first and make sure they're getting adequate protein. Because protein, like high fiber foods, is a great agent in order to keep you fuller longer. It can be plant-based protein or it can be animal protein, but you want to make sure they're meeting their protein needs and not just grazing on refined carbohydrate foods all day, which I will tell you based on data and my personal experience working with parents and kids, sadly, it's a large part of the American kiddo diet, is this very refined, the snacks, refined carbohydrate, or poor quality high trans fats, not necessarily the best kinds of fats to have.
Well, you hit a very good point when, which is very personal with me, when you were talking about texture of the food. Because when I was younger, my mother would overcook the vegetables. And I didn't particularly like it because it didn't taste right. Because, as I say, it would just fall apart in my mouth. As I got older and met other people and they were eating other households, some of the mothers had raw vegetables with a dip, and all of a sudden I liked it. I love raw carrots that I could munch on. I love broccoli, especially, and put a little dip in it and have raw broccoli. To this day, the second point, which I want to make, most people eat till they're full, till they're stuffed. That you learn, or Max said at the beginning, finish your plate. You don't have to finish your plate. I know I learned that when I started like dieting, and me and my wife would go out to dinner. Instead of ordering, 2 main dishes, we'd order one and split it. And all of a sudden I found out that this was fine. I wasn't hungry after I split the dish. I didn't have to eat the whole thing and leave with my stomach full and feeling like
So there's definitely been a movement over, I would say, the last many years to get parents to sort of dispel with this clean plate club myth, for that exact reason. And remember, back to my division of responsibilities. Your child decides how much. Now, you don't want them to go hungry, but I assure you their ability to self-select, unless there's some underlying physiologic condition that's going on, and that needs to be addressed with a pediatrician, your child's ability to self-select food is amazing. Your job is to stay the course with providing a wide variety. Even if your child is normal weight, you still want to bump up, always offer have a fresh bowl of fruit and out on the counter when they get home from school as an option. They may eat it, they may not, but that visual cueing is so important in terms of seeing it on a consistent basis and processing that internally and saying, you know what, maybe I will. That apple does look really good to me today. Plus, it gets them that much closer to the fiber rule with children. Most adults know that for men, men need around 35 grams of fiber a day. Women need about 25-ish grams a day. For children, it's not quite that high. So we use the age plus 5 rule. So whatever your child's age is, add 5 to that. And that's the amount of grams they should be having each day in total fiber. So you got a 5-year-old kiddo, 10 grams of fiber a day. So again, that might require a little bit of label reading or looking online. Again, you don't have to count everything out. If you try to meet the minimum number of fruits and vegetables a day, choosing legumes, beans, and kids will eat beans, just give them a chance, so these foods that are a little bit higher in fiber, and you will get that much closer to that minimum number that they should be having every day for a variety of different health reasons. And
Well, now
please,
social media, directs a lot of things, especially towards the middle school and, a little
yeah,
younger than that. And if they're watching Nick or whatever they're watching, maybe who even knows TikTok. I mean, you have a choice. Should you have the left Twix or the right Twix? Should you have,
right,
a Kit Kat
broccoli,
bar?
huge. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely influences from outside the parental units, and
yes.
you don't see them all the time. So is there any? I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
So you're right. So even if they're not watching commercials anymore, the product placement, as we just mentioned, it's all over the place. So they're going to see the kid drinking maybe a soda or a soft drink or Gatorade. Oh my gosh, huge. I mean, Gatorade has it's full, and I don't want to just blame Gatorade. It's really any of the sports drinks. And let me step back a second and say, I think that there was a role for sports drinks. I do. I just don't think it's in our little kids. And I think for many of our middle school age kids, so that takes us up into about 14, it's abused. And I think it's because of this placement, and they see their favorite athlete using it, and it's all of these shows that they're watching. They've internalized this as, if I drink this, I will jump higher, run faster, and do all of this. And it becomes an empty source of calories that, quite frankly, given the amount of calories that they're expending in their activities, it's just not enough to warrant the extra calorie load that they may be getting from some of these sports. So as a parent, you can't control everything your kids are watching. You could certainly try. And all you can keep doing is minimize. So you stay the course in your home, so that even if they are seeing this in either product placement or in a commercial, or quite frankly at another friend's house, because let's face it, as kids get older, you're not on the play dates anymore. So your child is over at their house and you don't know what's going on over at their house. And you can't really say, you could, but I'm not sure how that would go over with the family. Excuse me, Johnny can't eat any of the stuff that you're serving in your house. You can't do that. So Johnny gets it when he's there. When you come home, you go right back. You stay the course with what you have to what you have to offer as options. And in the long run, they will more often choose the healthier options.
Right.
And even if you have an occasional treat, it's not that bad.
The next time you go to the supermarket, there's certain products that you see that are
Sure.
your eye level. Take a look, go down on your knees and see what they're showing to the kids. I mean,
Yeah.
when you go shopping, they live in a different world. They're seeing all the sugar-laden, cereals, all the candies, all the bad snacks, and this is all on their eye level. And also, when you go to the checkout counter and you're holding them, what do they have in the checkout counter? All the chocolate bars and the junk food. But anyway,
the one quick thing is that because of the pandemic, I don't think many kids and people went shopping this year. But the other thing is, I think people cooked more, and kids cooked more, and kids were making breads and salads and all this other thing. So in that way, I think that was a positive outcome of this crazy year plus. So, but I know we're out of time, Malcolm.
yeah.
But let me just say along that line, and I'll be brief, Malcolm, I promise.
Okay.
As much as people are busy, right? So even if we've been home more often now during, this pandemic, try to eat together as a family as much as possible. I get with sports kicking back up again, people's busy schedules, and let's face it, people will start traveling again at some point. Don't make yourself feel badly about not being able to do it every night. But as many times as you can, eat together as a family. That mealtime is so key, first of all, for model setting. So your children see what you're eating. You can share stories. It's great for bonding time. There's so much good about it. So I would highly encourage, as much as you can, to try to do that together as a family meal.
Well, eating should be fun time. It's not like a serious type of thing that, oh my God, we're gonna have to eat. It's fun time. You enjoy yourself. You enjoy the taste of food.
Food is, I mean, it shouldn't be painful. So you're right. It should be enjoyable. It's a time to laugh. It's a time to share a story. It's time to, eat good. So
Okay.
for many people, hopefully they experience that. For some people, it's a little bit of a tall order, but you're right. It should be a great experience.
Right.
That's why
Well,
the Food Network is popular,
yeah.
because
I
in
mean,
times like this, people
it-
like to watch the Food Network for
it-
comfort.
it's
it's
fun when
comforting.
when people say whatever your ethnic group, manja, 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 or come, come, come. In Yiddish, it's es mein Kind.
Right.
It's said with love and fun.
Right.
With that
Yes,
note, we have to say goodbye.
so thanks for joining us for Courtney on Health. To get more info, follow Courtney on her Facebook page, Courtney on Health, on Instagram at CLG Wellness, and her website, CourtneyGrevenese.com. For more shows, go to MalcolmPresents.com and theManyShadesOfGreen.com. So here we are with Courtney on Health, smart, sound nutrition, strong, safe fitness, and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to see the teenage years.
Oh, it's gonna be
The teenage years.
Right, and that
the,
is
the wonder years.
anyway, with that, speak to you next week.
Have a
Bye-bye.
great day, everyone. Bye.
Bye.